Welcome all to today's Leica conversation. This is an ongoing series of talks and webinars designed to spark conversation as well as inspire your visual storytelling. I'm your host, John Kreidler, product specialist for Leica Camera USA. It's my privilege to introduce today's guest, Phil Penman. Phil and I have worked together on different projects as well as Leica Academy workshops. I enjoy watching Phil photograph as he seeks out these moments in time. A lot of his street work is composed of strong geometric shapes as well as the light and shadow that he sees. He is constantly shooting, no matter the weather or how long the wait. Phil is originally from Dorset, England, and at the age of 16, he visited and fell in love with New York City. He knew New York was his destiny. Working for Splash News in LA in 2000, an opportunity presented itself for Phil to migrate to New York. He jumped at the chance and has not looked back. When I look at his street portraits, I see his love of humanity and his connection to the subject. Phil never steals a portrait. They are all earned by him investing in the citizens he meets. This is the area that we'll be spending most of the time discussing. As an instructor, Phil is always looking to help students get the image they're looking for. That's not to say these images are handed to them, but Phil teaches them how to read a scene and then how to apply and create images that show their own humanity. Let's welcome Phil and find out what makes him one of today's most influential street photographers. Hey, Phil.
Hey, John.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good seeing you. It's been a while.
Yep.
In these COVID times.
At least a few months, right? But at least we can contact you every single day.
Yes. Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Asking for, can I borrow this? Yeah, it's great. All right, so let's jump in here. So Phil, you're 16 years old. You come to New York. You fall hard, for the city. This is where you need to be. Fast forward to 2000, you land a job with Splash News, open up the New York office. Take us through what an average day would be for Phil Penman back in 2000, shooting in New York.
Well, this is an average morning for me. This was, so the only thing was our days would basically start at like 7 a.m. And this is just a typical day working for Splash News. The morning I was hired to cover the Lennox Lewis Mike Tyson press conference. Okay. When I arrived at the scene, it was like 60 photographers. Everyone's down in this pen, looking up the stage, waiting for the fighters to come out. And I kind of, whatever everyone else would do, I would do the complete opposite. So wow. I looked up, there was like a balcony. I went upstairs and there was a guy with a Mike Tyson jacket on. He was like one of Mike's crew. So he turns to me and he's like, just be ready, kid. So I'm like, oh, I figure something's going to happen. Literally, as soon as Mike comes on stage, this brawl breaks out. Obviously, predetermined that this was going to happen. Right. And, I get this great shot of Lennox going for Mike. And of course, all the other photographers who were on the ground floor couldn't see anything. So I got the only shot of this. So, there I am. I'm happy. I've quickly run out. I get my pictures wired. I start, hitting the streets again. So typical day would be going around looking for celebrities until a phone call would come in for a day rate, which would be, we'd be called to go on whatever assignment they wanted us to do. So I get home at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I guess, thinking that my day's done. Phone goes, right, get to JFK. So this would happen quite a lot. Like, a friend of mine came over once for holiday and it's literally, I had one beer with him in a pub and it was like, get to JFK, and I left him for a week. Wow. So that night I had to get to JFK and fly to Denver, get into Denver around 12 o'clock at night. And then me and a reporter, we had to drive from Denver to Aspen through the night because we needed to be on a stakeout for the next morning. And all we'd been given, the only details we'd been given was Michael Jackson was somewhere in Aspen and we needed to find him. So it's about 4:30 in the morning. We've been driving for 4 hours in a snowstorm, and we get 20 miles away from Aspen, and there's a roadblock saying the road is closed. So we're at this point, I've been working since 7 in the morning, and I'm starting to lose it. We turn around because we figured the only way we could get there was to drive back to the freeway, along and down again. And literally at 4:30, we're driving along and a police car comes up behind me, puts his lights on, and he's like, pulls us over. This is 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, the guy gets out and he's like, why do you think I'm pulling you over? And I'm like, probably because we're the only car you've seen all night, which is probably not the best thing you could say to a cop. But he said, well, you were driving 35 in a 25 zone. And I said, you're trying to lecture me and you couldn't even be bothered to put a sign on the freeway telling everyone that the road to Aspen is closed. So we got off on the wrong foot, and he let me off of a caution. But I said to him, look, if you hear of 2 guys sleeping in a car outside a Pizza Hut, you're going to know who it is. So get like an hour's sleep. We get to Aspen, and then I spent about a week looking for Michael Jackson. And eventually on the very last day that we were there, we saw 2 huge guys standing on a street corner. It was suspicious, and we park our car, and all of a sudden this guy in a blue jumpsuit walks right in front of our car with this kid. And at the time, this was a huge story because Michael had just been charged with the Gavin Arvizo case. So a picture of him was huge to get at that time. So we got this picture, and that was taken by me in the back of a moving vehicle behind a rear tin, because we knew if you get out on the street and try to take this picture, you're going to have your camera smashed. So that is a typical day. And what I used to have to do.
Wow, that's crazy. So I guess this too might have been a typical day. As you can see, it's the glamorous life of the paparazzi, and
the red carpet,
obviously, and the weather. Great weather, and tell us about this project. I guess how you started doing some of this behind the scenes photography of the paparazzi. But then if you could relate that to how you shoot today in terms of that evolution of how this particular experience helped you evolve your photography.
Well, the thing was, I'd always been a photographer, even before I came over for Splash. I used to shoot corporate stuff, news work. So I'd always had that photography background, and I'd started when I was 15 doing black and white. So, I got this opportunity to work in the States, which was always my goal. And the thing is that you find yourself doing this job that you don't want to do, but you have to do it in order to stay in the country. You get to do great jobs at the same time, but it's not what you want to do. So I kind of turned it. After a few years, I decided I bought an M7 off a friend of mine, and then I got slowly hooked. I bought an R6.2, an R8, an R9, and I would keep one of those cameras in my bag with me. So I'd have a 200 or 400 at one end of the bag and my Leica at the other end. And anytime that there was a picture that was worth no money, like when another photographer or 10 photographers would show up, I'd get my Leica out. And I started shooting the behind the scenes of how celebrity photographers would work, So this is how, that's Katie Holmes coming out of her apartment. And I because I was a photographer, I always wanted to, shoot more of the artistic side anyway. So this kind of brought me back to a little bit of sanity, I'd say.
Okay.
you know, so I needed it. I was going down the dark road with the celebrity stuff, and a lot. There's a very quick burnout rate. A lot of people quit the industry like within 1 year because they'll work 22 hours,
So,
22
wow.
hours.
So the average life expectancy of a paparazzi is 1 year. How long were you able to
I,
carry it on?
I did 15 years, and that was
15 years?
largely because I knew that
Jeez.
I would. I kind of set myself rules. I would never work the weekend.
Uh-huh.
So I knew that I'd always have Saturday, Sunday off, unless it was something huge, like Brad and Angelina, and I had a hot tip.
Gotcha.
Um, and also because I was able to go and do this, you know,
Hmm.
because I'm riding around on a bike all day looking for celebrities, it just gave me access to seeing another world. And, you know, I always wanted to be on the streets. There's nothing better than being out on New York streets, you know, sipping your coffee
Okay.
in front of Finelli's and just hanging out. So,
Finelli's.
yeah, I know. So
I
it's
miss
kind of,
Finelli's.
Google thought it was my home address because I spent so much time there. Let's put it that way.
Wow. All right. So let's forward to what is probably the biggest story, certainly of our time, the morning of 9/11. Tell us a little bit about that day for you, and kind of take us through the process of that day.
That was my first day off, believe it or not. I'd been here for
Wow.
6 months and working every single day for the news agency. And this was actually my first day off. And got a call in early in the morning that the towers had been hit. Jumped on my bike. I was down there like 5 minutes flat. And I was, you know, the first thing I thought was I need to get a clear shot. So like the bird on the left, the
Hmm.
towers. The picture was, you know, I hit Soho because I knew that there was a clear vantage point from
Right.
there. And then I was shooting for maybe like 45 minutes down by the site, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm in front of Trinity Church, and the towers just start coming down in front of me,
Wow.
and
Wow.
there's
Wow.
no warning, and all I'm seeing is I'm shooting, like I had a 24 to 70 on, something like that, and you're watching the building coming towards you in the
Mm.
lens. And I shot, and it wasn't until like some firemen grabbed me, and we ran into J&R Music, which was, it's no longer there, but it was
Right.
just behind this, and we ran in there and basically waited for the dust to settle.
Okay.
I just, because you couldn't see anything out the windows, it was completely
Mm.
black. Um, so waited for the dust to settle before I just came out into just like a film set almost. It was
Right.
paperwork coming down from all above. That's the one thing, that vivid memory I have, is the paperwork coming down.
Wow.
And just seeing images like this, where people were just walking towards me, and
Hmm.
you question yourself, can I do this? Can I, you know,
Right.
in front of these people? And it was like, kind of had to snap myself out of it, and like, you know, you're here for a
Yeah.
reason. You came down.
Yeah.
You're
Sure.
actually watching history.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in a position where you actually saw individuals coming out and making their way. Now I know this particular image is of a person that I believe the museum connected you to.
Yeah. So
Uh,
Joanne on the left, uh, I donated my work to the 9/11 Museum in
mhm.
around 2015, and they started going through all my images and realizing that a lot of these people they knew. So I became friendly with Joanne, and a couple of years later, she invited me to photograph her wedding. So that was incredible. That
Yeah.
it was like 17, 18 years later from this picture to being with her, photographing her on her wedding.
Well, it's certainly interesting. And then this image again with these men, you know, coming out of that area. And how did you get introduced to them?
So George on the right is actually an Englishman, and his daughter saw this picture, I think, in like one of the British papers,
Okay.
and contacted us. And I've since, you know, I met up with all three of them about a year later, and then so like George, I went out to see him. Like I stay in touch with them quite regular. And sure enough, on the right, this was cool. It was like drinking whiskey with him in January. Um, yeah.
That was before our Miami workshop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Making your way.
I drove down from New York to Miami for a workshop that I was teaching, and hang out with him, drinking whiskey in his house in Jacksonville, and that was cool. But it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you know, as a photographer, you've been able to, you know, connect with these people on what was probably the worst day of their lives, and yet still kind of develop that relationship and still hang out and still be part of their lives. To me, that's interesting, and I don't think that's the norm for photographers today. So let's talk a little bit about your commercial work, and give us an idea on a timeline. Was that you were doing that as you're doing paparazzi, or was this a traditional time?
This is what I set myself a goal when I was young. I wanted to be working for the independent newspaper, working in New York City, shooting features, and this was, you know, I achieved my goal, my dream. Both of these shots were shot for the independent newspaper, which was the be all and end all photography newspapers in England back in the day. This was shot whilst I was doing the celebrity photography as well, the paparazzi. Okay. So my bosses kind of explained it to me. They said, look, you're going to get this work, but you remember this is like a $500 day rate versus a Michael Jackson picture that might be worth $100,000. So
oh, wow.
You have to do this in order to be able to do that.
Right.
You know, we got to shoot. You know, a lot of our work wasn't really celebrity. It was mostly investigative work, and I actually enjoyed that side of the job. But so I was doing all kinds of stuff, but you know, getting access to people like Christopher Reeve, and this is still the biggest head trip for me, was knocking on his door and him coming to the door in the wheelchair, right, and wow, drinking cups of tea with Christopher Reeve in his kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
So I mean, you know, Bill Gates, you know, we hear stories about, you know, how difficult he can be, I guess, particularly if he doesn't want to be involved with a certain project or with a certain photographer, let's say. How did you, how were you able to, I guess a better question would be, were you able to kind of develop little micro relationships with these celebrities that you photographed? And take us through like what a day would be like if you get the assignment, hey, you got to go shoot Bill Gates or Christopher Reeve, or we've got some other celebrities that we can load up.
I would always do research on everyone before I met. Obviously, Bill Gates and Christopher Reeve, you kind of know. But Bill, I had 15 minutes with him, which apparently is a long time. Wow. And what's kind of cool is like you get access to people that you can ask questions to. So like with Bill, it's like, all right, well, where's technology going to be in 10 years? And he called it exactly 10 years later. It's like Christopher Reeve was like, he's probably one of the funniest people I've ever met, to be honest. And I can understand why him and Robin Williams were such good friends. But I've met so many cool people over my time.
So Brenda Lee and her husband, I guess he was out back doing some gardening.
So
take us through this image. It's one of my favorites. I just love it.
To me, she's one of the coolest. I think she's probably like, you talk about pros, it doesn't get any more professional than her.
Right.
So I do a lot of lifestyle portraiture with celebrities. And one of my assignments was to shoot Brenda. in her house. You know, here's me chopping carrots, here's me da. And all of a sudden her husband comes in looking like this, and Ronnie, he's like, all right, I'm ready for my close-up. I said, all right, okay, come on then, let's get you next to Brenda in front of the piano. So they can't, you know, they're sat there like this, and they're smiling, and I'm like, no, you got to look deadly serious, because it like throws everyone off that he's in these dungarees and that.
Right.
So she turns around to me, he walks away, and she's like, good on you, you know, he tried to call you a bluff and you called him on it, because he hates having his picture taken, like absolutely despises it.
Wow.
So probably about 3 months later, I'm in a shopping mall in New Jersey, and I get a phone, you know, my cell phone rings, and it's, hey, it's Brenda. And I'm like, you know, Brenda who? Brenda from Nashville. And I'm with my wife, and she's like, you've got to be kidding. Like, Brenda Lee's calling on your cell phone. So that's like, how can I help you? She's like, oh, you remember that picture you took of me and Ronnie? I really want to use that as my Christmas card. Wow. So I sent her the picture, and then literally like 2 months later, I'm doing a portrait shoot with Bobby Rydell down in Philadelphia, and he's like, we're discussing who we met, and she said, you know, I said, oh, Brenda Lee, and he's, oh, it's so funny, because I just got the most amazing Christmas card from her the other day. So what kind of all went full circle for Ron.
That's amazing. And that is a great story. So cool. Here with Charlie Daniels and his wife. Yeah. When you're shooting something like this, what's more important? Is it, you know, capturing a moment, or trying to I guess the emotional feeling, to kind of capture the emotion? What are you looking to do? And how is that directed by an art director, or do you have free reign to just do what you want?
Yeah, to me, the way I looked at it was like, I'm going to spend an entire day with a living legend, and I want to ask them as much as I can, or get chatting and know who they are, and, you know, get to know who they are. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of expecting this uniform, kind of like big team, creative, you know, 20 people around, and there I am. I show up with my one camera, and I pull my Leica out, and it was always a good talking point, because everyone knows what a Leica camera is. And I've been on some jobs where, like I was doing Paula Deen, and they're suspect of you. As soon as you show up and you're on your own, and not a big team, then they're suspect. So I remember the makeup artist was going, oh my God, this guy's not messing around because he's using a Leica. They wouldn't even let me leave the property until they saw the images. And so Charlie Daniels and Hazel here, like I had such a great time with them. Like, unfortunately, Charlie's since passed away, but you know, I spoke with them afterwards, and they used this as their 60th anniversary picture. Wow. So a lot of the people that I would shoot, I would always stay in touch with after the fact.
Yeah, that is impressive. And speaking of Leica photographers,
Mr. Bob Harper, I believe you're watching, Bob. So hi, I had to get this one in there. I had to do again. It was like a lifestyle portrait shoot with Bob, and I noticed he had a monochrome on his counter, so we got chatting, and one of the coolest things, like, you don't expect this, is like, you know, I have a show coming up this weekend, by the way, Bob, and it's like, you know, and sure enough, he shows up to the show.
Wow.
Which caught me off guard.
That's great.
But, you know, Bob's a great shooter himself, and, you know, he just sent me a picture of his latest monochrome with a silver 50 Apo, which I'm very envious of, because that's exactly the setup that I wanted to do. So so it's just
very cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think it's something that all photographers should strive for, is not only the relationship of the day, but kind of that ongoing thing. It's just interesting to see how a photographer could be part you know, so many lives as, you know, as everyone's life, you know, kind of lives on in a way. All right. So this will begin here, even though this really isn't from citizens per se, but it's the beginning of perhaps the idea of citizens. So again, this is an image taken in Soho, Worcester and Prince.
Yeah.
I believe that's either Katie Holmes or Buzz Aldrin. I'm not sure which.
It's Katie, Katie Holmes.
Katie Holmes.
My money's on Katie.
Yeah, just, you know, she was at Finelli's, wanted to stop by the Leica store in Soho, and wanted to go unnoticed.
Yeah.
So what can you tell me about how this image happened?
This was, again, like, you know, I talk about like, or my paparazzi days, and I have a lot of hate for it, and but at the same time, it's like I have so many pictures that I wouldn't have gotten without it. Like this one, you know, I was riding down Prince Street looking for celebrities and bumped into this scene, you know, a guy walking in his suit, and, you know, I throw my bike down and quickly grab my picture. I would never have seen the stuff that I've seen without it. So
yeah,
although I didn't really enjoy the job, it got me a lot of pictures I never would have seen otherwise.
And probably something like this, mariachi.
Everyday occurrence, man. Every day.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I just got so bored of shooting them. Yeah, this was like riding up Lafayette and just see these guys doing like a rehearsal. So this was kind of like, you know, I asked them, like, do you mind if I take a couple of pictures while you're rehearsing? Right. I sent them a bunch of frames from this as well. But
wow,
really I was happy with that.
Really neat. Okay, so it comes to this image, which I find interesting.
It's not interesting to most people watching, you know?
Well, you know, I think, you know, any man that has a turkey that wants to take it for a walk
That's true.
should do so outside. This was outside the Met, right? So I'm wondering, what's the process? How, like, where was the guy when you spotted him? How many shots did you take to get this shot? Did it end up having to be posed, or you just kind of ran or walked backwards shooting him and that kind of thing? What can you tell us?
This one was kind of like, you know, I see a guy walking, and so I just quickly run to the side and I get a picture of him like walking the turkey up the road, and it works because of the hot dog stand for me.
Right.
Otherwise, a guy walking a turkey is just extremely boring. But I got this picture, and I grabbed him and said, like, you know, you mind posing for a picture? And I have this full length of him, which is kind of like the thing for citizens was always, it's kind of like a set format that I would shoot, but
right.
For some reason it didn't work with this particular image. I think it's just because of the color vibrancy in the background that makes it work.
Yeah, because normally in your citizen's image, as we'll see, it's a light background, and it's totally not blown out, but out of focus. You know,
it's all
like a beautiful three-dimensional image. But I like this guy's smirk. You know, like if you can't handle me walking a turkey, well, this is New York. You know, turn down the next street.
Exactly.
All right, so this comes to the cover shot for the book Street by Phil Penman, available for sale everywhere. Okay.
Everywhere.
So I guess again we're seeing a full length, out of focus background. You know, this is, you were saying, kind of the your idea for creating these portraits.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how this image happened and where you were in it.
I was in Times Square, and I was just taking a picture of something else, and I turn around and this guy's just standing there like this. And, you know, I'd like to say it catches you off guard, but in New York City, you see stuff like this kind of quite regular, to say. And I asked him, like, if he didn't mind posing for a picture, and, you know, normally people, they go into some weird pose, and I just said, no, it's got to work. The way it works is if you just stand there with your case, and it's because he's wearing the suit. The portraits I shoot are all with the 35 Summilux 1.4.
Okay.
I'm a lot of the time before I even approach people, I'm looking at the backdrop. I'm always trying to isolate them from the backdrop, focus on the eyes, and just push it out as much as I can.
You could see his eyes through the.
Oh yeah,
through the foliage.
No problem. No problem.
We have, I guess we've had a couple of questions. People are wondering, you know, the turkey walker was color. You know, most of the work, in fact, I want to say all the work in Citizens, well, it's primarily black and white.
Right.
How are you making that choice of shooting, or why are you primarily shooting in black and white?
My cameras of choice have always been the monochrome. So I have the 246 and I have the M10 monochrome as well now.
Okay.
And so obviously when I go out with that, that's it. It's black and white. I have an SL setup that I take out with me as well. And I've had M9s, 240s. And if I'm going out with the color camera, then I edit everything in color and black and white.
Okay.
Not every image works either way. So a lot of my work is a little bit of both.
Okay.
I'm not going to go and say like I'm a purely black and white photographer. I do gravitate to it a lot more because that's kind of how I grew up shooting, was black and white. But some images just work better in color. Like the turkey walker works well in color because of the backdrop.
Here we go with someone that is throwing you a pose. I mean, how do you feel about, I think you had mentioned earlier that with the previous shot, people sometimes ask, how do you want me to pose?
Right.
So here, obviously you didn't have to ask, right? So tell me about this portrait. And it looks like he's got an amazing microphone.
Yes. So this is outside Port Authority on 8th Avenue. And
okay.
He was pushing his cart, singing to his microphone at the top of his lungs, Lady Gaga. And I grabbed him and kind of said, do you mind if I do a quick shot? And of course, kind of, it's just every scenario is taken differently. So with this one, you kind of like, if I try to tell him, no, I need you to pose like this, it's not going to work. You kind of have to let them do their thing. Right. Yeah. So I take each one differently. But this one works. You can't really go wrong with a guy with an Indian headdress,
Now, I've noticed you tend to center your subjects. Is that a conscious decision? Some people like to shoot, off left, off right, but everything I think we've seen in Citizens has been centered. Is that part of the workflow? And
I wanted it to be, I didn't want there to be too much trickery with, low angles and close. I just wanted it to be, person is a great person, great character in themselves.
Right.
And I don't need any more than that. All I need is a flat portrait, full length.
Right.
That's just them. And
clean background.
Yeah, just isolate them from the backdrop, but just let them be them. And it doesn't need anything else other than that. It was just keep it as pure as possible.
So with this shot, I'm wondering why you took it. I mean, this guy looks pretty like your average New Yorker. I mean, I'm guessing you asked, like you always do, to take the portrait. Did you get any of his story, or were you afraid if you spoke too long, your camera might stop working?
Yeah, pretty much. I was across the street doing another portrait, and I saw this guy walking down and kind of like on a mission. So I quickly asked, and at first he was like, kind of, why do you want to take my picture? And I was like, you look incredible. But he was pretty serious, obviously. So that you've only got a couple of seconds that you can get it. Normally, before I even approach someone, I kind of have an idea of, I get my camera settings correct,
Mm-hmm.
like figure out what's going to be my backdrop before I even approach them. Because most
Okay.
people, they don't have time, especially in New York City, man. They're like, boom, 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 moving. So I've only got a couple of seconds to get the picture anyway.
Okay.
So,
And these are all natural light. You're not using a flash of any kind for the street work, right?
no, just let the lens kind of do its thing. And
Yeah.
like I said, I'm not that worried about blowing out backdrops or anything like backgrounds.
Right.
I've never really been worried about that.
Gotcha. All right. So now we'll talk a little bit about your work during COVID. So uh, basically, I guess take us through. I know you stayed in the city the entire time,
Right.
which, to be honest, I think you're one of the few photographers, and because you're a news photographer by nature, I think it was natural for you to stay in the city. What can you tell us really about the early days? And I think the images that we're going to start with are more from the early days of COVID.
Yeah. You know, like I said, I was still working, so I was taking assignments from newspapers to cover it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The early days, you could it's weird, kind of like watching the last few months play out.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the early days, you could see people's faces. You know, there was a general,
Right.
there was a fear out there. Nobody was really out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people were out there, but it was just like you're documenting history. We know that this is going to be a big thing in our lifetime, and you would regret it as a news photographer if you hadn't covered it. I would make sure that I would get up ridiculously early, get out before anyone in my building was up, and walk the streets all over at like 4 or 5 a.m. and stay out
Mm-hmm.
5, 6 hours.
So was that a concern of you, not just your own personal health, but the health of all those people that you would come in contact with?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried. Well, I am worried, but I'm not worried so much about myself as in the people that are around me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I live in a building of around 3,000 people, so
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not going. I made sure that I didn't see anybody for a long time. I stayed
Well,
clear of people
mm-hmm.
for a conscious effort.
Yeah.
This at this time in the morning, you're not seeing anybody anyway.
Yeah.
This is 42nd Street.
Wow.
Early morning at like 4 a.m. I think.
Wow.
And you kind of, it's been interesting watching how the city's changed. Like you walk
Mm-hmm.
out there now and there's people everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing's changed.
Yeah. So the I guess the foot traffic and that kind of thing. I mean, and the stores, or there's still a lot of stores boarded up. What's the feeling? I mean, um, obviously this being very early in the morning, in early COVID, there's still activity. But how about now today?
It's packed. It's like a regular day now. You walk out on Friday afternoon, 9th Avenue traffic is backed up as far as
Oh wow. Yeah.
it's back to normal in my. But it's like we went through the stage of like early days where it was like nobody was really out there. Kind of, well, there were people out there, but
Mm-hmm.
many. You could, like I said, you could see in people's faces,
Mm-hmm.
generally worried. And at
Right.
that time, the death toll was going up dramatically every single day. And
Right.
then, you went through the stage where everything was boarded up, which it was even scarier for me because you don't know what's coming next.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Now it's like you go out there and it's like a regular day, but everyone's wearing masks.
Right.
This was like early COVID.
Yeah, because now it would probably be difficult to take a shot like this because
Oh yeah.
there might be hundreds of people on the street.
Yeah, I tried to do this months and months back, and I couldn't get a clean shot because there was people everywhere. And then the next, you come out. This was probably like March or April, and I'm literally waiting 30 to 40 minutes for a person to walk by. And it's got to be the right looking person as well that fits in the hand, and the right color, as
Yeah.
well.
It's a great image. So angels aren't just in heaven. Apparently they're in, was this Chinatown or
That's on
Soho or?
the Bowery, I believe. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, I was just doing one of my daily walks, and I see this lady playing the harp on the Bowery, and I think she's since had to move because she was getting harassed so much, if you can believe that. But
Wow.
um, she told me that she had it in a dream that she had to be out there. She was very sane before anything.
Hmm.
She heard it in a dream that she needed to be out there playing her harp for people.
Okay.
That's what she was taken to do. And she wasn't asking, she didn't want money from anybody. She was just doing
Hmm.
it for people.
Is there, I guess, are there different parts of the city that you visit regularly? I mean, is there a box that you stay within, or do you expand? I mean, what's your, like, in terms of location and trying to find things? My guess is that there's areas that you've had a lot of success and those you visit more frequently,
Right.
like maybe Soho, Bowery, 42nd Street, Times Square area.
Yeah.
Uh, but kind of give us a sense of what you're doing and how you're where you're going and what you're shooting.
Oh, so, my neighborhood is Midtown. So I walk out my door, and if I'm going out
Okay.
to do some errands, I'll take my camera with me. But, I have all this stuff around me. And then maybe I'll say, all right, today I want to hit up Flatbush, Brooklyn. So I'll
Hmm.
head out there, and then I know that I'm going to spend 2 to 3 hours out there, and then walk across the bridge, and then walk back to my house. And then another day I might say, well, I want to do, up by the George Washington Bridge and that area, and then I'll walk down. So I'll pick an area that I want to go to on a particular day,
Okay.
and I'll kind of start there, and then generally walk back to where I live.
Okay.
There's shots everywhere,
Yeah.
absolutely everywhere.
Well, when you're looking at images and you're looking at subjects, you're looking at citizens, let's say.
Right.
Uh, what makes an image to you special? Uh, a portrait special enough, let's say, to take an image. Um, is it? I guess what is it?
Like before, it was kind of like I was looking for characters. Anyone
Uh
that
huh.
anyone that would make an effort,
Mm-hmm.
um, or it was kind of like it's not fake. It's someone's real. That's
Mm-hmm.
who they are. Generally, who they are. Like the guy who's singing Lady Gaga, that's his
Right.
thing, right?
Right.
Um, or of someone who just makes an effort to look good, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they have a good style about them. And the
Mm-hmm.
nice thing is when you go up to someone and then they're generally surprised that you want to take their picture.
Mm.
That's kind of a rewarding that you gravitated to the right person that you
Right.
want to shoot. Um,
Right.
this person was there were two of them walking, I was chatting with some guy on the street having a coffee, and all of a sudden these two walked down the street holding this pole. And the guy who I actually wanted to take a picture of, he didn't want to do it. And
Ah.
I was chatting with him for like an hour. And
Mm-hmm.
then this lady came along, and I just asked him because I learned from 9/11
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't take a lot of certain pictures that I should have done.
Right.
So this time I've kind of figured, right, everything is a photo.
Right.
Person with a sign like this, a sticker on the floor that says 6 feet away,
Mm-hmm.
a sign in your grocery store that said heroes work here. Everything's a shot. A picture of a
Gotcha.
front cover of a newspaper. That is a picture that 20, 30 years, 50 years from now, those
Mm-hmm.
are the pictures that are going to be more memorable.
Right. Yeah. So, what can you tell us about this young man? Uh,
Don't,
and I don't mess with him.
don't mess
Uh,
up.
I've got to say this has got to be a 75 Mach Deluxe image. Uh, I mean, I'm guessing
Not this one.
or not guessing.
That's a 35.
No,
35.
35. Okay.
But so for like, I guess for like the last 3 or 4 years that I've lived in Midtown,
Mm-hmm.
every day I walk past this guy, and he's like, he sits in a chair near the Port Authority, and he's just like always basking in the sunlight, and he never says anything to anyone. I never see him bother anyone. And during COVID, you know, he's very intimidating. Like you see the guy, you don't want to, you know, like I say, don't want to.
He looks like he can bring it if he wanted to bring it.
So I'm walking down the street, and I just like, you know, there's not too many people around, so I always like say good morning, and I nod to him and say good morning, and then he's like, you know, you want to take my picture? I'm like,
wow.
Yeah, I'd love to. You know, I've seen you for years, but I've never had the balls to go up to you and ask. So all of a sudden, he's like, you know, so he stands up and he gives me this big smile. It's like, I'm like, totally caught me off guard, and the way that he talks as well, didn't expect. So I did one like this, just where I let him just do his grin. Normally, I'd be like, no, I don't want that. But for him, I just grin away.
Yeah.
And then I said, but I gotta have a shot of you in your chair as well, man. So I did a picture of him in his chair as well.
Wow. So,
sorry.
Okay. So if we came, you know, the next Academy workshop that we'll be teaching, hopefully sometime relatively soon, maybe we'll do something in New York in person once things get back to whatever new normal is. If you were teaching a class and you had a student with you, would this be an individual? Like if he approached you and gave kind of the same story, but you had somebody with you that you were teaching, would you do anything different than you normally would? And what lessons would you try to specifically communicate to the student?
You have to kind of assess, every situation's different. So before you even approach someone, you have an idea of what they're about before you even approach them.
Okay.
You know, whether the person's going to turn crazy on you. Like I shot one the other day where it was like, you know, I took this picture of this guy with this hat, and within seconds it goes to, you know, I want to get a gun and take everyone out. And I'm like, whoa. You kind of gotta, it's almost like it's an art of conversation. It's not just about taking pictures. It's like how you talk to people.
Right.
That
is very important.
That's like de-escalating the situation. So a lot of the time, like if I was teaching someone, it's like you're kind of like getting a feel for who the person is that you're going to approach before you go up to them.
Yeah.
It might be sitting back and also knowing how to de-escalate a situation quickly.
Yeah.
You know, and paying someone a compliment, that always helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Someone says, why do you want to take my picture? It's like, because I love your sneakers. So, you know, that's an awesome headdress you're wearing. You know, I want to wear.
Yeah. All right. So this then, I guess we have maybe about 10 minutes left. I saw this post on Instagram that you put up. Why don't you like my work? And to be honest, I was like, whoa. I mean, it was just a really thought-provoking article. And I know we, as photographers in general, I'm not going to say we all live and die by Instagram, but it probably shouldn't be the driver that it is.
Right.
But what kind of, I guess, why did you write this post, and kind of take us through it?
Well, first thing that I saw was all of a sudden people were just posting left, right, and center, like, what's going on with Instagram? You know, my number quartered. Can everyone comment on my picture because nobody's seeing my photographs anymore? So like there was this big drive, everyone was talking about it. And I noticed with my own post that all of a sudden the numbers that I used to get, I wasn't getting anymore. So I started looking into it, and I figured I'd kind of like write an article explaining kind of what was going on, and also that, you know, everyone wants that picture to be liked, but is it really the be all and end all? Like people, I found that people gravitate to a certain kind of picture on Instagram. It's, you know, it's a small screen. You tend to see it's the same image over and over and over again that people gravitate to. And it's almost like you're creating a clone of photographers that all shoot the same way. So for me, I actually used it as a positive. It became like, well, if it doesn't matter anymore, like one change of an algorithm can just completely destroy your quest for likes or whatever you were doing. It doesn't matter. You can just be the photographer you want to be. You can show the work that you want to show. So I just started, you know, I basically archived or deleted my entire feed and just started putting up pictures that I wanted to put up. And, you know, and I was kind of holding back on showing this work because, you know, you get driven in this kind of like, oh, it's got to be a shadowy silhouette image because what people go to, and I want to build a following, you know, but are you getting the right followers as well?
Right. So then when we talk about being creative within Instagram, I've noticed that you've gone to these to layouts, which to me, when it pops up in my feed, it really grabs my attention because it's different and not everybody's doing it. So take us through the thought process about, you know, why you do it and how you decided to start featuring your work in this way.
Well, one, work with a good graphic designer. So I work with a woman called Anya, who's at The Letterist. And she kind of like, so, you know, you're doing the same boring white feed that everybody's doing. And everyone is doing the same thing. I tried different.
Right.
Like, you know, come on, like we can try something different. So, like I said, because it didn't really matter anymore, it's kind of like, all right, I can promote my events now. When someone looks at your profile, it's not the same white feed. You know, you look like a million other photographers. So I just figured, all right, I can start playing with it. I can start creating magazines. That it can be much more interactive. And it's just, I enjoy doing it anyway. I enjoy design. So I kind of, but first piece of advice, create yourself a second account to test it before you do it, because this stuff can go wrong so quickly. Yeah. You know? So, but it's just, I just figured like when someone looks at your profile page, it's nice to see something different that someone else is not necessarily doing.
Right.
These are just
so I guess you know, here's two images, and the this again, one of my favorite wintry shots, has almost 11,000 likes on it. What can you tell us about the process when you're creating an image like this? Obviously, this is color, although you know, very muted. Everything else. What take us through that process of, you know, how long did it take for you being in this spot? I mean, did you just rolled up, this guy was walking across, all the lights are red, boom, you're done, you're on to the next thing? Or was it a little different than that?
It's slightly different. So if I know snowstorms coming, I get all my gear, all my Gore-Tex winter gear out the night before. I'll get up typically 3 a.m., 4 a.m. and head out the door because you want to get it before the cars have kind of come out and messed everything up, or the pedestrians have come out. So that one I was probably walking around for about a good 3 to 4 hours before I stumbled into this, where I saw these beautiful red lights. And, you know, I'm stood in the middle of Madison Avenue trying to not get hit by cars as well. So it probably, you know, you make your own luck by...
That is important.
Yeah. Note to self.
A little bit. Note to self, don't get hit.
Yeah, don't get hit. You have to put yourself in that situation to get that image. So it's like, you know, it's not like you just come across it. You know, that's waiting for different shapes of silhouette to walk across the street. There's not that
Gotcha.
many people walking around because it's snowing. Just one important thing to note, like the likes thing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm paying attention to that. Like, you know, if I was to go on my biggest ever picture was like 110,000 likes and there's two celebrities drinking a Strongbow. Is it my best
Right.
image I've ever taken? No.
Right.
So I don't get
Yeah.
it.
I mean, right. In my world, it would be, you know, post a picture of a Leica camera, uh, and all those camera images are always far above with likes than the photographs that I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's like a friend of mine said to me, like, why Sebastião Salgado got not doesn't have more likes on his pictures? I'm like, I kind of just
Yeah.
sold it right there. It's like,
Yeah.
that's your reason.
Right. So this image, the snow image, what lens were you using for it?
That one was shot with the 90 to 280, which is
Okay. Oh wow.
so I use that lens quite a lot for it's kind of going back to my press days where, you know, the
Okay.
200 lenses you have was like a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a 90 to 280 for a lot of my street photography as well, where I kind of want
Wow.
to contact an image. So
Yeah. I mean, that is interesting. I mean, you know, if you ask 10 people, you know, what focal length lens would you use for street photography? Probably no one's going to say a telephoto lens, but I like those images that you do because it shows the compression
right.
from that lens, and it's, to me, it adds to the drama
You're
of it. Yeah.
missing so many good pictures if you limit yourself to one lens. You know, there's so many great images that you're not getting because of that. So, you know, it's good to train yourself where you go out with one lens and you are the zoom, you're moving back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you know, you can walk with a 28 all you like, and it's still not going to get that compression that you get with that 90 to 280.
Right. Yeah.
So
No, I think it's a great lens, and I know the academies that we've done together with groups and in person, we've had a few, and the students enjoy trying it because it's something that in general they're not exposed to in that vein. So
every single person I worked with that shot with it ended up buying one.
yeah.
So,
So if you take a class with Phil, be prepared. You're going to buy stuff.
it's going to
All
cost.
right. Speaking of buying stuff, Phil's book Street is available in a lot of places.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
In fact,
But
here's my own copy.
Yeah,
I really enjoy it. Very inspirational. Great book to add and have in my collection. If you want to follow Phil, you can follow him on Instagram at Phil Penman, or check out his website at philpenman.com. We also do bespokes with Phil Penman. So this would be a one-on-one virtual workshop with Phil. Learn all his techniques, tips and tricks, and everything that he knows personally about photography. He's more than willing to share. He's just a great instructor. So also coming up in September 17th to the 20th, again, another workshop with Phil Penman, Photographic Evolution. This again will be an online workshop. We've got a great agenda for people that are looking to really move your photography. I'd highly recommend it. So that is available at the LeicaAcademyUSA.com website. Coming up next week is a conversation with Stella Johnson, and that'll be August 20th at 4 p.m. So look for that. In the meantime, you can check out our archives of both Leica conversational programs as well as Stay Home with Leica on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions about any of the programming for the Academy, you can contact the Academy at LeicaCameraUSA.com. So again, thank you, Phil. Can't thank you enough for the time that you spent and hearing all these great stories and getting to understand your evolution as a photographer, the way you see and record and photograph with such dignity and humanity, and you like to maintain that relationship. So we appreciate very much your time and sharing these stories. And thanks again for being with us.
Thanks so much, everyone.
It was great. So thanks very much, everybody. And hope to see you next time on Leica Conversations. Take care, everybody.